there. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Every Friday we sit down and chat about a case that we feel has an important message that can help others in similar situations, save a life, change mindsets, or even contribute in changing laws. But before we dive in, here's a little side note. Every bit of information, images or footage was compiled from what's available online, or if we were lucky in some cases, from the very people closest to the case. All opinions expressed are our own. We mean absolutely no disrespect. So don't click out and stay a while.
The study of crime and society's response to it is terribly important. This is one of the main reasons behind this podcast. It was to understand the nuances of criminal acts and having an opportunity to give victims a human form and voice again. The ultimate goal here is to keep people like you and me safe, to learn how to protect ourselves and watch over our loved ones.
Hello again. It's been a while. So, diving into this week's case, there's the two usual questions that we normally ask ourselves. What is it about this crime that stands out, and what can we learn from it? Taking the first question first, what is it about this crime that stands out? The thing for me that I kind of look at in terms of my perspective is, as a collective, we are kind of on a journey together, where at the start we all held certain beliefs and assumptions about what stalking is, what it looks like, the different components of it, the average victim looks like, the average criminal looks like, what happens. We all had certain beliefs and assumptions. In the different episodes that we've done so far, what we've tried to do is to pick a crime that in some different way challenges those kind of assumptions and kind of pushes our understanding of stalking out a little bit further. In terms of what stands out about this crime, I think how different it is from the other crimes and maybe to the standard assumption about what stalking is. Most of the stalking cases that we've done so far, and the kind of general assumption about stalking, tends to be that it stems out of some form of personal or romantic relationship that's gone wrong. In this particular case, there was no such relationship, and yet the perpetrator, the criminal, obsessed over the person, despite the fact that that person moved locations, including moving out of the country for several years at a time. The criminal's obsession did not go away, and when the opportunity was available to them, that the stalking took place. The fact that the perpetrator never moved on, that is something that very much stands out, because as we've heard in some of the previous cases, some stalkers had maybe moved on to other targets, or as we saw in some of the more recent ones, we had heard how the person they ended up killing, they had actually left previous relationship where there was some form of violence and then come forward into the next sort of relationship they were in, and then the stalking escalated to murder. And yet we have this 12-year period where it does not appear that the perpetrator has done any of that, that the obsession remained. When their opportunity was there, the stalking took place. The next thing that kind of stands out about this one, is the fact that there are multiple victims around the periphery of the stalking. So you have Mary, the obvious one is Mary's daughter Beth, who is abducted. Then you have, where there is the case of mistaken identity, the home invasion and the terrorization of Mary's in-laws. And finally, we have the murder of 6-year-old Jason Wilkman. The kind of callousness, if you like, the disregard for the lives of these other people who are around Mary, her in-laws, her daughter, to Jason, who is an innocent bystander. So the next thing that stands out is just that complete disregard for human life. The kind of final thing that stands out that maybe is not new and is actually a shared part of a lot of the problems that we see in these crimes is the institutional failure side of things. Because with the perpetrator, that person is already in the system. The fact that he had committed several acts of arson on people that he didn't really know, trying to set their apartments on fire. The fact that he has committed assault, domestic assault. He had moved to the United States when I believe he was 8 years old. Then his father passed away at 11. He had younger siblings, and according to his mother, he was violent towards his siblings, not just as teenagers, but also going through into adulthood. And there are also, on top of these criminal sort of red flags, because he is in the system, because I believe he had to go see a psychiatrist, having been caught in relation to the arson. But according to his mother, there is also other personality-related red flags. So one thing that came up was the fact that he used to lie frequently in order to try and make out as if he was right about everything. The lies that he told her about the B that she gave her having ruined his life, that he didn't get the scholarship, that he couldn't go to university, and he ended up going to NAM and being a POW, that none of those were true, that he actually finished first in his class, he did go to university and was never in the army. The second personality red flag was that he never seemed to accept the blame for anything. And this leads us on to the second question. What can we learn or take away from this particular crime? This one is quite a tough one to answer because the perpetrator is quite different from the previous ones. There is no pre-existing relationship. The victim is pretty much unaware of this guy completely, does not recognize him, does not even seem to realize that she is in any kind of danger, has not received any type of threats. It just seems to happen out of the blue, and yet it does not. The first thing that we can kind of learn from this is just that aspect of vigilance, because there are some things that, looking back, you think, well, there should have been some cause for concern or something that might make you think something's not right here, so at least your awareness is there. So there is, for example, the case that he had tried to break into their apartment through the patio doors with a blowtorch. There is the fact that he had tried to drill holes upwards through their floor to spy on them. The fact that he's been stood out in the woods at an angle so he can try and see in through the windows of their apartments. The fact that he's just loitering around the apartment building enough to notice that they have packing crates and the like coming because they are planning to go on another missionary out to the Philippines again, which is the kind of triggering event that he felt that he needed to escalate whatever plan he had as quickly as possible. But it is, again, a bit of a tough one because there's none of the obvious signs that most people assume go hand in hand with stalking. Are you supposed to be, paranoid all the time, looking over your shoulder, locking your doors? Are you supposed to go through life like that? Takeaway from this is maybe that is over the top, but at the same time there are some warning signs that were just missed, and who knows maybe what else, because he has been lurking in the vicinity. He didn't just wing it, he didn't just bust in there. He had a plan. That the takeaway is if there is something unusual, to take note of it. A second part that kind of comes out of this is the kind of unfortunate part when, whilst being captives of his, there were a couple of occasions when Mary made attempted cries for help. One example of this being the traveller's check. She kind of cleverly thought, well, if she pays with a traveller's check and people know that she's missing, presumed abducted, that will pop up in the system somewhere. So she uses that as kind of trying to throw up a flag to say, hey, look, I was here. When we talk about vigilance, it isn't always necessarily from the perspective of protecting ourselves or protecting our immediate family. It's also vigilance in the sense of protecting society, in the sense that what if we were the person who received the traveller's check, or if we worked for an institution that's supposed to flag that to the police, or if we were that group of boys that heard somebody shouting for help from the camper van. Again, trying to find that balance between vigilance but not paranoia, and dealing with things in the right way when something occurs to us as being just out of place, that we should at least tell somebody, we should share that information. It should get noted somewhere because somebody is either looking for this information or this information adds up later on. If all the breadcrumbs and the pieces of information that people knew were there and were in the system, then it would be far more obvious what was going to happen, and something could maybe have been done to prevent it. One last thing about what really stands out about this crime is how in previous episodes we had talked about things that had happened once the police had got involved. So we'd heard how receiving a warning from the police or something had caused the perpetrator to escalate their actions. How some of them, after receiving the warning, had committed murder, or how some of them had actually committed murder whilst on bail, awaiting trial. What stands out about this one is how when the perpetrator was caught and taken to jail, one of the first things that he had done was to offer a fellow inmate $50,000 in exchange for murdering Mary and Beth to stop them testifying against him, and to then help him escape jail, which didn't work when the inmate actually reported this to the FBI. So that is an escalation we had not seen before. And another that we had not seen before is in the second trial, as the first trial actually related to the abduction of Mary and Beth, the second trial related to the murder of Jason, where Mary was a witness and the perpetrator had managed to smuggle a knife into the courtroom, and whilst Mary was giving evidence, was able to get to her and attack her with the knife to the extent that she received 62 stitches to facial wounds. So that leaps out again as something that is different about this particular crime compared to some of the others that we have seen. The fact that when challenged by authority in the past, that has been a trigger for them to go to another level of violence or to commit murder. In this case, he had been unable to murder Mary, but then even when caught in prison, trying to reach out to kill her, in the courtroom, trying to reach out and potentially kill her. So that is something that stands out, and yet is the desire to kill the person is something that is a commonality still between them.
People generally make rational decisions about the choices they make in their lives, and that also includes the decision to commit a crime. If society provides enough punishment, a rational person will weigh actions versus consequences and decide not to commit the crime as the risks are way too big. Hence, the threat of punishment acts as a deterrent to committing crime. In England, prior to the 1600s, private citizens or government officials brought cases before judges, who would then decide whether certain acts were illegal. The judges wrote opinions that contained the reasoning behind their decisions. Over time, judges came to rely on the consensus that emerged from these opinions. The collection of these written opinions came to be known as the common law. By the 1600s, the judges, not the English Parliament, had defined crimes such as murder, theft, rape, and assault. Of course, clever citizens repeatedly found new ways to commit immoral acts, so society continued to call upon judges to refine the common law by defining new crimes. For example, in the 1700s, judges concluded that inciting rebellion against the government should be criminalized. They created the crime of sedition. But like centuries ago, human beings still find new ways to commit immoral acts. The common law generally reflects the values of our society. This is why it is incredibly important for the legal system and the people in charge of policing to continue refining the existing laws and setting new laws in place. Sympathy only goes so far. We need dramatic improvements in how society and the court system perceive stalking as a criminal offense and how victims of this crime are treated by the legal system and by the people. Most communities should be able to provide a variety of services to assist the victims of stalking. That should include prevention and immediate crisis response to protect the victims, legal assistance, medical care including physical and psychological treatment, and rehabilitation. Even if the case we've covered in our last episode isn't an intimate partner violence, the stalker had developed a wild fixation on his victim, Mary Stauffer, an obsession that lasted 15 years in this criminal's mind. As we explained in previous episodes the different types of stalker, this one fits very clearly in the love obsession stalking. Just to refresh your memory, love obsession stalking is where the target is a casual acquaintance, such as a co-worker, a neighbor, a celebrity, or, as we've just seen with Mary Stauffer, a teacher, with whom the stalker desires to establish an intimate relationship. This obsession can also grow out of low self-esteem and depression. The stalker believes that he'll be more significant if he establishes a relationship with his desired target. He's likely to reinterpret any response, no matter how negative, as some indication of a desire for a relationship, or he may resort to violence to gain attention from the victim, as we've just seen. The most well-known example of this type of stalker is John Hinckley, who shot President Ronald Reagan in the belief that it would make the actress Jodie Foster love him. Which begs to question, do stalkers ever stop? The great challenge of dealing with stalkers is that often they refuse to accept that they're doing anything wrong. They may see themselves as just like any other infatuated lover or fan whose target really wants to reciprocate, or a person on a mission to avenge wrongdoings or stop unacceptable activity. Almost invariably, stalkers have some background of relationship problems, and in some cases are clearly mentally ill. These factors all come together to make stopping their stalker behavior very difficult, without addressing the more fundamental aspects of their personality that led them to use stalking as a way of dealing with these challenges and frustrations they have. And the key to getting the stalker to stop is by the victim not giving any indication at all that the stalker exists, or that his or her actions have any significance. The overt and psychological objective of stalking is to obtain some reaction from the victim, perhaps an indication of the desire for a relationship, new or continued, or to show that the victim is suffering. If the stalkers can't have that effect, they may move on to other targets. Of course, ignoring constant pressure from stalkers is extremely difficult, and victims may be tempted to try and reason with them, which is in fact almost universally pointless. The stalker simply reinterprets the contact, and it usually fuels his actions. Unfortunately, sometimes a nil response can also lead to more aggressive or intrusive actions. In that case, the use of harassment laws to get a court order may be the only way forward. Police intervention such as arrest and conviction has to be handled very sensitively, because it can make matters considerably worse. Whilst researching, I came across a list of advice for stalking victims put out by the University of Hartford. Although there is a no one-size-fits-all list of recommendations that will be applicable to all stalking situations, there are 4 golden rules that should be followed if you find yourself the victim of stalking. Number 1, have no contact with the stalker. The police should be the only one to confront your stalker after you have firmly communicated that you do not want to be contacted. Number 2, tell others. Obtain the necessary support to get through the ordeal. Number 3, increase your personal protection. Find ways to protect yourself both physically and online. You never know who could be monitoring your telephone conversations, emails, and social media. Number 4, collect evidence. Proof is a crucial element to building a case against your stalker. Compile a chronological journal. Organize paperwork including police reports, no contact orders, and other relevant paperwork that is important to your case. Keep originals safe and give a copy to family or friend. And don't forget to email yourself a copy as well. Save everything you receive from the person. Notes, letters, email, text, unwanted gifts, and keep records such as pictures and dates of items received. Keep telephone messages. And most importantly, handle evidence carefully. When reporting to the police, get someone to accompany you. Ask for a copy of the report. Ask to be kept informed of any contact the police will have with the stalker so you can be prepared of possible retaliation. This includes issuing warnings, serving protection orders, or laying of charges. Ensure that all breaches of protection orders are recorded and reported to the police immediately. Here's a list of common mistakes victims often make. Providing too much information about yourself to people you don't know. Not giving a clear, calm message that you are not interested in a relationship. Not listening to your intuitive sense. Ignoring early warning signs. Not taking the situation seriously enough. Responding to a stalker in any way, shape or form. Trying to reason or bargain with a stalker thinking you can resolve the problem yourself. Blaming yourself. Not taking adequate privacy and safety precautions. Not being fully prepared for all the retaliation possibilities. Failing to obtain support from others, either personally or professionally. Expecting that the order of protection and police report makes you physically safe from harm. Obtaining weapons that could be used against you. Ignoring your mental and emotional health needs during and post a stalking experience. So what do you do when you receive harassing messages? Hang up. As soon as you hear unusual sounds, obscenities, heavy breathing, or the voice of a known stalker, keep hanging up. Do not engage in conversation, taunt, or laugh at your stalker. This might just be the spark they need to escalate the situation. Remember Stalkers are not known to be rational thinkers. Do not give out any personal information. For example, if you're posting a picture of yourself on Instagram, do not log your location detail. Never encourage interactions, and change your passwords often. According to statistics from the Office for National Statistics, 1 in 20 women last year alone would have experienced stalking in England and Wales. Without even knowing it, someone in your life, a co-worker, a family member, or a friend, could be the object of a stalker's obsession right now. This leads me to the inspiration behind choosing stalking as the first season of our podcast, the Alice Ruggles Trust, putting an end to stalking. The Alice Ruggles Trust mission is to help prevent what happened to Alice happen to others. We need to bring stalking to an end. The trust exists to raise awareness of stalking, including coercive control, to ensure that relevant legislation is effective and adhered to, and to bring about lasting improvements in the management of perpetrators and the protection of victims. The Trust is a member of the National Stalking Consortium. If you or someone you know need the help, need the support, there are places you can go. If you're in the UK, you can go to victimsupport.org.uk. You can contact the National Stalking Helpline on 0808 80 20 300. The National Stalking Clinic, which is located at Camlet 1, North London Forensic Service, Chase Farm Hospital, The Ridgeway, Enfield. Their telephone number is 020 870 26104. You can also email them on nationalstalkingclinic@nhs.net. If you're located in the USA, you can contact victimsofcrime.org. Their number is 202-467-8700. Or you can even email them at info@victimsofcrime.org. You can also visit the justice.gov webpage or safehorizon.org. If you're located in Denmark, go to danskstalkingcenter.dk. Their number is 25177374. Thank you for listening, and farewell.